Yep.
Okay, so we're going to go through a tour of the brain here. If we look at the brain, this is our two-part brain. We can see it's divided into the right and left cerebral hemispheres. Those right and left cerebral hemispheres are separated by this gap in the middle called the longitudinal fissure. If we look at the surface of the brain, we'll see it's divided into four lobes that we can see on the surface. The frontal lobe at the front, the temporal lobe on the side, occipital lobe on the back, and parietal lobe on the top side. The lobes are separated by a couple of sulci. The central sulcus runs right here. It separates the frontal and parietal lobe, and the lateral sulcus separates the temporal from the frontal and parietal lobes. If we take our 8-part brain, we'll note that we can also see this fifth insular lobe, which is located under the frontal and parietal lobes. It can only be seen on our 8-part brains.
Don't go for physical therapy. My cousin hates it. Just saying.
If you look on the brain, we'll also see a number of gyri, which are the hills under here. The only gyri you're responsible for are the precentral gyrus, located just in front of the central sulcus, and the postcentral gyrus, located just behind the central sulcus. For the remainder of the features of the brain, we're going to use the half section here of our 2-part brain. What features can we see? This large white band is the corpus callosum, which connects the two hemispheres of the brain. The teardrop is the septum pellucidum. This pink band that we can see here is the choroid plexus. At the back of the choroid plexus is this little white piece sticking out, which is the pineal gland. In the middle of the brain, we see a brown dot. The structure surrounding the brown dot is the thalamus. Just below and in front of the thalamus is the hypothalamus, which is enclosed within this small white W that we can see. If we go to the back of the thalamus, we see the structure that looks like a little white bum, which is the corpora quadrigemina, a portion of the midbrain. The top cheek of the bum is the superior colliculi, and the bottom cheek of the bum is the inferior colliculi. We can also see in this half view of the brain the pons, which is this egg-like structure here, and the medulla oblongata, which is this small swelling we see just below the pons. The thalamus, the structure around the brown dot, actually encloses a space, and the space the thalamus encloses is called the third ventricle. Follow the third ventricle down, we see the cerebral aqueduct, this small river of space near the corpora quadrigemina, which eventually leads to the fourth ventricle, this little projection we see at the cerebellum. If I put the brain back together, and we look at the features on the bottom of the brain, we'll note that we see two small white balls located just below my finger, and those small white balls are the mammillary bodies. On either side of the white balls, we can see the cerebral peduncles, pillars, which are a portion of the midbrain, seen on either side. We can also see the large brown cerebellum at the back. We can see the pons in its intact structure, and we can see the medulla oblongata located just below the pons. In terms of nervous system structures that you're responsible for on the brain, we can see the olfactory nerves ending in the olfactory bulbs, the tip of the white structure. We can see the optic nerve right here. Where the optic nerves cross is the optic chiasma, and on the back side of the cross we find the optic tracts. There's a couple features left that we need to use the 8-part brain to show. One of those features is the lateral ventricles, and these lateral ventricles wrap around the insular lobe. And finally, the cerebral cortex. The cerebral cortex is this pink surface of the brain that we can see tracing around the white matter found in the middle.
Is that it?
I think that's it.